Hi, everybody. I'm Beatty Fredos, and welcome again, my friends, to the Ask Beatty Show. It's really amazing how quickly the days go by. I feel like I was just hosting the show a couple days ago, and of course, it was a week ago. As you all know, for people who've been listening since 2013, I can hardly believe that was the very first year when I met Dr. Garnell and we talked about my hosting the show. And initially, our talk was about my having my old Ask Beatty calling counseling radio talk show and the way life has kind of evolved. I think a lot of people are at work, a lot of people are busy. So the show has basically become a show where I have really, really interesting guests and where I also do psychological commentary and analysis about hard news and also about hard and soft news stories. So, as you know, I am a psychotherapist and a sex therapist, and I'm the author of a book that I wish that I had had when I first began my own dating and relationship life. It would have made life a lot easier had I really known what ingredients went into a healthy long-term relationship. And of course, my book is based on the research that I did with 450 people in the Boston, Providence, and Connecticut area. And what culminated as a result of the research was my 10-step fail-safe formula for assessing. I know it's not sexy, I know it's not romantic, but how important it is that we do really, really good assessments in order to find out who somebody is and who somebody is not. And prior to my doing the research, and I think most of us are probably doing similar kinds of things, we meet somebody, right? And we say, gee, what a nice person, or what an honest person. But the reality is, for me anyway, since I did the research, and of course the book is For Better, for Worse, Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love, the person appears to be honest and nice and gentle and kind. And what my research found was that it really takes about a year using my 10-step formula to really find out who somebody is and isn't. And for me, the book is really about empowerment. It's educating all of us, and above all, really and truly trying to keep us safe. So if you are somebody who's in the dating world and you're meeting people, my mantra, and I don't want people to be paranoid or to go into relationships with a lot of anxiety, but I think that the reality is that we have to be very, very careful who we let into our lives. And there's another reminder that I think that we all need reminding about, and that is a reminder to say no to the things, the people, and the places that steal our joy. So if you're looking at all the people in your life and the relationships you have to really be honest. Are these people loving and supportive and kind and compassionate and honest? Because these are the kinds of people that we really want to have in our life. And I hear this all the time, with patients that I treat in my private practice in New York City and also in East Hampton. People will say, something like, well, he's only abusive a couple times a year, or we only have violent arguments on occasion. And of course, what is my retort? And for those of you who've been listening to the show, you know me, right? You know me through the show. My retort is that a little bit of poison happens to be poison. And a little bit of poison will ultimately kill us. It'll kill us either emotionally, or it will kill us physically, or it will kill us in both ways. So again, we don't want to go around, assuming that people are out to get us. I mean, that's a terrible, terrible way to go about living our lives. But again, we have to be cautious and we have to be careful. So, for those of you who may be tuning in for the very first time and you're wondering, so who is Beatty Convedos and what is this Ask Beatty show really all about? Really, in one word, it is about empowerment. And we talk about the things that we can do to improve the quality of our lives and the quality of our relationships. So naturally, as a psychotherapist and sex therapist, I talk about mental health issues and sexuality and relationships. And again, we all go through so many ups and downs of our life. And trust me, nobody is immune from life's challenges. But I have a mantra, and I hope it can become your mantra as well. And my mantra is that we need to be open. We need to be willing to acknowledge and address and resolve as best as we can, even though we can't change our history, the things that continue to get in the way of our lives and our relationships, things that really prevent us from living a happy and joyful life. And as I say, nobody, whether or not you're rich or poor or black or white or educated, or whether you have a private plane and houses around the world, none of these variables translate into people necessarily having their act together and being able to live happy and joyful lives. So if you're finding that you're going around in circles, you're on a roller coaster ride, I really hope that I've been able to convince you that we don't need to navigate life's ups and downs on our own, and reaching out to family and friends. If you're lucky enough to have loving and supportive family and friends, I think that's great. But sometimes in our life, it may be a really good idea to reach out and get some good professional help. I mean, I see people who've been really suffering from depression and anxiety and substance abuse issues and relationship problems for their entire lives. And they've tried to do everything that they possibly could to change that trajectory. And as I say, we all need coaches. Jim and I, we were looking at the French Open, the tennis tournament. And when you look at the players, you look at Alcaraz, who was the men's singles champion yesterday in Paris. He talks a lot. He talks a lot about his team. And when I was playing championship tennis in Canada, and by the way, I can brag here, I was number 10 in Canada as a junior. My team consisted of my dad, who was my coach off and on the tennis court. And one of the things, of course, that he taught me was to never give up, whether or not you're on the court or whether or not you are talking about navigating the game of life. But when I look at the tennis players and you look at professional athletes in a variety of different sports, nobody is doing this on their own. I mean, the woman who won the French Open, Iga Swiatek, she was talking about her traveling psychologist, and there are physiotherapists, and there's coaches, and there's hitting partners. So again, all of us need other people to support us. We need a village, and it takes a village for all of us to be able to live our lives in the best possible way. So if you look around your own life, hopefully you may not have a village, and all it takes really is a couple of people who you can call, a couple of people who will take you by the hand when you're having a really down, difficult time. And it makes all the difference in the world. And of course, in my practice, I see people who don't have the families and who don't have the friends or the network or the support. And this is why they've chosen to reach out to me, to a professional person who would hopefully then be able to help people expand and build loving and supportive networks. Because in the final analysis, and you look at all the studies and the researchers, what does it really boil down to? It really does. It boils down to love and meaningful relationships and being able to find our purpose in life, something that really motivates us to get up in the morning. So I ask you, do you have the people in your life, and have you found your purpose? And you're never too old. Like a lot of people, you're busy, you're trying to support yourself, you're trying to support a family if you're lucky enough to have a family. And we oftentimes we forget about ourselves, we forget about our own needs and wants, and we're kind of scrounging around to find our raison d'etre, our reason for being. And our reason for being is something that's really, really important. It makes our lives meaningful. It cannot just be about me and about what I'm going to want to do every single day. And what I found over the years, and I've been practicing now for over 35 years, is it being able to have helped and continue to help thousands and thousands of people from every single walk of life, people who I would never, ever have met under normal circumstances. It's given me a perspective, and I would like to think an empathy and a compassion and an understanding of what's really important in our lives. And what really is important is caring about other people, of course, caring about ourselves, but caring about other people and feeling that we are contributing in some way, personally, professionally, and even politically, to people's well-being. And when we do that, and when we live a life of love and purpose, I think that we get back 1,000-fold in the giving and in the doing and in trying to create and make this world a better world for all of us. So we're going to move into my weekly check-in. And so how are you doing? I mean, you think about it, we schedule appointments with doctors and dentists, usually once a year. And, hopefully things are going well with our bodies and our teeth. And yet, I think oftentimes we forget to check in with ourselves in terms of our mental health and our relationships. So, this is why I ask you the same questions, the how are you doing questions, every single week here on the Ask Beatty Show. So, if we're looking at mood and if we're looking at mental health, how are you doing? Are you finding that your depression that you may have suffered with for various different periods of time, is the depression lifting? And what about your anxiety levels? This is a crazy, crazy time that we are living in right now. People are uptight about a lot of different things. So how is your mood? Are you feeling that most days you're able to really get up in the morning with, optimism? Or are you finding that anxiety, depression, or perhaps even substance abuse of various different kinds, or eating disorders, or relationship difficulties, that these are the things that are really hampering you from being able to live a happy and joyful life. And once we are willing to be honest with ourselves, and what I find a lot is that we fool ourselves in a variety of different kinds of ways. But if we're honest, if we're willing to acknowledge that things are not going as well as we would like, the next question then becomes, so what are we going to do about it? And it is the awareness, it is the self-awareness, and then more importantly, the action that we are prepared to take. Again, going back to the world of professional tennis and professional sport, I mean, these people, they practice continually. They do all kinds of things to be able to get to and maintain and stay at the top of their game. There is such self-discipline, especially in the world of professional sports. And I think that oftentimes we become lazy, and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to maintain a certain kind of focus and a certain kind of follow through. And yet, if we don't, people oftentimes just tend to really go around in circles or find themselves on a never ending roller coaster ride, and then wonder why things are really not changing in their lives. So it is problem, solution, awareness, action, and again, remind yourselves that we do not need to navigate the ups and downs of our lives on our own. So if need be, you have to give yourself permission to reach out and get some good help. So if we're looking at our relationships and not just our, personal love relationships, romantic relationships, I'm talking about relationships generally, relationships at work, relationships with our friends. How are they generally? A couple of weeks ago, actually, it was probably a month ago, I was a guest on Barbara Huff Government's podcast, and she's a New York Times best-selling author, and her focus is on women over 50. And she was telling me during her show that every single morning she has a network of friends. I think it was 3 or 4 friends that speak, even if it's just for a short period of time, every single morning, where they're able to connect. And what a great, great, great way for this group to start off their days. They realize that they're really there for each other. uh I was just very impressed with the fact that, she has been able to maintain this close network of women, apparently for many, many years. So maybe we all don't have networks like this, but again, making sure that the relationships that we have, even though there may not be big numbers in our little world, making sure that the relationships are loving and supportive and compassionate and authentic, and that you don't feel that you are on a never-ending roller coaster ride, which could make us all crazy in a variety of ways. And if you're looking at your professional life too, I mean, people are making changes all the time. Are you basically, contented, uh, really with what you are doing? I mean, you may have thought that you should go into business, or you should do something because of family pressures or because of history, and yet you find that this is not your calling. This is really and truly not what you are wanting to do. Are you willing then to get the necessary skills and give yourself permission to live your life on your terms. This is not about family. This is not about pleasing others. This is about trying to figure out for each of us what, in fact, is the best way that we can find to live our lives. And it may be very, very different from what perhaps your family or friends or people in your groups think that you should be doing. And really, that's the task for all of us, figuring out, and it's not necessarily something that's easy, that you can just do overnight, but figuring out is what is it? What is it that we really want and need in our lives and in our relationships? And of course, then the challenge is to be willing to stay on a very, very productive and constructive path that will hopefully lead us in the direction that we say that we really want to be going. And what about your physical health? How are you doing? Are you getting sufficient sleep? Are you exercising? Are you eating well? Again, it's very, very easy with everything that people have to do these days to neglect ourselves, to neglect our relationships in a variety of different ways. And as you certainly grow older, you see that having good health is just so important. And there's certain things that we can't prevent. And yet on the other hand, there are many things that we can actually do to try to ensure that we are living our life in ways that are in our best interest, physically and mentally and sexually. So this is sort of how are you doing reminder. I think that it's oftentimes a wake-up call for people to contemplate, to take some time and contemplate whether or not we are actually on track. And then if we find in our honesty with ourselves that we are not, then of course the question becomes, are we actually willing to do something about it? So the questions that I ask you, I know that they're not easy questions to answer. And hopefully, at least people who are listening to all of Gary Null's shows on the Progressive Radio Network and my show on the Ask Beatty show, hopefully you're actually on a really good path, following great advice from many experts who have shows on the Progressive Radio Network. But if you find that you're not, or that you're mostly just not going in a direction that is, really aiding to your happiness and your joy and your emotional and physical well-being, are you ready perhaps today to pivot? Because it is our avoidance and our denial and our blame and our self-blame and defensiveness that really keeps us in a downward spiral. And the fact is, because I don't want this to sound easy, it takes a lot of courage to be willing to acknowledge and address and resolve the things that continue to get in the way of our lives and our relationships. And yet, what are the consequences, my friends, if we continue down a path, a destructive, self-destructive path in a lot of different ways? What are the consequences? Okay, the consequences is that if we refuse to really step up to the plate and confront our demons, old and new, what I call unfinished business and skeletons in the closet, it becomes increasingly more difficult to be able to fully enjoy our lives. So I'm hoping that in your weekly checkup that you are absolutely on track, that you are on a really good path. But if you're finding in some of the areas that you are not, I hope that I have sufficiently motivated you today to start to really take care of the business in your life, right? That is really intruding and is impeding you from living a happier life. A couple of days ago, I was reading in the New York Times, and there was an article that just I thought, gee, this is something that I really want to discuss with you on the Ask Beatty show. The headline: Top 5 regrets people have when they die, says ex-hospice care worker. Many don't realize them until the end. And I'm going to just read you something here. This is a really, really great article. Many wish that they'd expressed more love and forgiveness and use their last words to show their appreciation for the people in their lives. And I'm going to read that again. I think it is a reminder. It is an important reminder for all of us. Many wish that they'd express more love and forgiveness and use their last words to show their appreciation for the people in their lives. And this is an oncologist whose name is Siddhartha. I can't really pronounce her last name all that well, although I will try. Mukherjee recently said during a commencement speech, and this was at the University of Pennsylvania, other people regret not doing enough for themselves, which is why the how are you doing check-in, check-up every single week is so important, according to Bronnie Ware, author of the 2011 book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Okay. Bonnie Ware, she spent 8 years administering aid for people battling serious illness, many of which turned fatal. So when you're working in that world, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the people, and you learn a lot about what's really important to people, even in retrospect, before their final days. She paid attention to the guilt and remorse people expressed on their deathbeds and thought that there was a big lesson people could learn from them. So these were the 5 phrases. And I thought this was really interesting. And what I was saying to my husband, Jim, let's not wait until we are dying or until we are on our deathbed to really take in some of the most important lessons that people who are dying can teach us. So number one, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So I'm asking you, for those of you who are tuned in right now, are you living a life that is really true to yourself? Not the life that others wanted or expected of you. It's an important question, to thine own self be true. This is what Shakespeare said. We need to be true to ourselves. We need to be honest with ourselves. And sometimes that takes some doing and some digging to really figure out what that is. Number 2, and I think this is so important, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. These days, people are working nonstop, whether they're at home or whether or not they still go into their offices. And in working so hard and working so many hours every day and every week, I mean, granted, I mean, we do need to work. We can miss out on many things in life that are important. Our kids, our families, our marriages. So we need to figure out for ourselves what's really important and prioritize the things in the final analysis before we die, the things that we really need to focus on and pay attention to. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. So let me ask you this. Are you someone who is honest with yourself, honest with others about how you really feel? Are you someone who's able to freely express whether or not it's anger or pain or sadness or love or loneliness? I mean, these are all legitimate feelings. And to be able to do it in an authentic way with yourself and with others. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. So let me ask you this. Are you someone who is connected? If you're lucky enough to have good friends, do you stay in touch? I've been asking myself this question recently, and there are a couple of people who I really do need to call. And I need to stop saying I really need to call them, and I really need to make sure that I actually make the call. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. And what this article pointed out is that the first regret, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. That is the one that this oncologist really heard the most. I wish, the song, Frank Sinatra song, I wish I'd done it my way, or I lived my life on my terms, in my way. And when people realize, this is in the article, that their life is almost over and look back clearly on it, it is easy to see how many dreams have gone unfulfilled, which again is why when I'm asking you every single week the same questions of how are you doing, making sure that you're living your life on your terms in the best possible way. Bronnie Ware wrote in a blog post recently, most people had not honored even a half of their dreams and had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made. And I think sometimes it's really a good idea to take a piece of paper and really just jot down some of the dreams, some of your aspirations, some of the wishes, things that are really important to you. Maybe, finding love, maybe doing some travel to exotic places that you've heard about or read about. Maybe it's going back to school. Maybe it's changing jobs. Maybe it's changing cities. Maybe it's changing countries. But to sit down with yourself in a quiet room without distractions and ask yourself, what's important to me? What are my dreams? I think that dreams are more than just goals, but I mean, they're certainly, interrelated. And then ask yourself, what's stopping you? What is it that is in the way, or what is it that you put in the way that is preventing you from realizing some, if not all, of your dreams? But it's interesting again that not only were more than half the dreams not realized, people were willing to acknowledge, I guess at the end, I mean, there is certainly no reason to not be honest with oneself, that it was due to the choices that they had made or not made. So this is an exercise. I think it would be a good exercise for all of you to do, to just ask yourself, are you on a path where the things that are important to you and the dreams that you have, that there is real potential for these dreams to be realized? And it may be that your answer is yes, and that would be terrific. And if your answer is no, you then may, especially if you're serious and it's important, you may need to pivot and make some changes in a variety of different ways to try to ensure the things that are important to you, because your dreams are important and you are important, and your goals and your wants and your desires and how you want to live your life, all of these things happen to be really, really important. So again, it's about the choices. It's about the choices that we make, or about the choices that we don't make, that ultimately will determine the kind of path in life that we are on. Again, in this article, and I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful article, and I'm going to put the title in the Progressive Radio Network archives when you listen to the show, or you ask your friends to listen to the show if they weren't able to hear it live. Prioritizing your job above all else makes tending to your mental health and relationships more challenging, to say the least. So there's a quote here from Bill Gates, billionaire Microsoft co-founder. Bill Gates learned it the hard way, he said during a commencement speech at Northern Arizona University last year. And this is a quote: "When I was your age, I didn't believe in vacations." I wonder what that was about and what he learned or didn't learn from his own parents. "I didn't believe in weekends. I didn't believe the people I worked with should either," said Gates, adding that he didn't realize that there was more to life than work until he became a dad. So lessons to be learned. Don't wait. This is Bill Gates talking. Don't wait as long as I did to learn this lesson. Take time to nurture your relationships. Again, I see this all the time. I do a lot of marital therapy, and invariably, the number one reason why couples really end up in trouble, let's assume that they married the right person, is that they stopped prioritizing their relationship. They let it go. And when we let important things go, especially our close, loving, primary relationships, we are really asking for trouble. So he goes on to say, Bill Gates, take time to nurture your relationships, to celebrate your successes, and to recover from your losses. Very important too, not just on the tennis courts, but certainly in life as well, to at least be willing to entertain and understand what happened, because we're not always going to win, and try and recoup and get back on a constructive path as soon as we possibly can. Take a break when you need to, and take it easy on the people around you when they need it too. And this is a lesson I think all of us, should really consider and certainly take in. Pouring time and attention into your friends and family, putting your interests first, and staying true to yourself all play a role in our overall happiness and life. And this is the thing, is that I think most people don't come to realize this until it's too late. And many people, this is somebody, of course, who worked in the hospice world for many years. Many did not realize until the end that happiness is a choice. Now, having said that, I mean, when children are born into abusive, dysfunctional, toxic families, that is not a choice. We certainly don't get to choose our parents. But as we get older and as adults, we do have choices. We do have choices to emotionally and psychologically work through what didn't happen in our childhoods growing up. I mean, that is a choice. That is a choice. It's not easy. It's painful to be able to relive some of the pain and the disappointments that many people who I treat have had to go through in order to be able to then move on. But I think that once we do that, we do need to be very mindful of the kinds of choices that we make. And of course, I say this over and over again, that ensure that we are living our life and we are living our relationships, including work relationships, spiritual relationships, political relationships, in ways that are really in our best interest. So this takes time, one, to pause and to do some real soul searching, to figure out whether or not we are indeed on a positive path for ourselves. And it's unfortunate that many people don't realize this until the end. She says they had stayed stuck in old patterns and habits. The so-called comfort, in quotes, of familiarity overflowed into their emotions. And when deep within, they longed to laugh properly and have silliness in their life again. So life is a choice. This Bonnie Ware, goes on and on in her prose, and it is your life. It is our life. And we only get to live it once. I mean, I suppose there are people who believe in past lives and future lives. I'm not one of these people. So you figure we have one life to live, and it is your life. It is my life. It is our life. So we have to choose consciously, very consciously. We have to choose wisely, and we have to choose honestly, and we have to, or we should choose happiness. And this is why, when we're off in 1,000 different directions, it's really important. It's really important that we take the time to pause and reflect, just to make sure that we are on the right track. And this takes a little bit of time, and it also takes a lot of honesty with ourselves. It's very easy to fool ourselves, well, just about everything. So if we can't be honest with ourselves, it becomes almost impossible to become honest with anybody else. Which takes me into a really interesting area. In fact, for those of you who've been listening to the show, you know that I am the advice columnist for Dan's papers in the Hamptons and also in Palm Beach. So I happen to write 2 Ask Beatty columns every single month. And I have to say that I've loved the writing. And even more importantly, I love the response from readers who actually do read my columns. So yesterday, thanks to my husband Jim, who happens to be my editor, and he finds all kinds of little things that really make a big difference in my writing. So I submitted the article to Tim Folger, who is the editor of Dan's Papers. And the article, the latest Ask Beatty article that is going to appear in the paper in a couple of weeks, is that we don't get what we deserve. We get what we negotiate. So think about that. We don't get what we deserve, but we get what we negotiate. So the most successful negotiation in the United States, and maybe even in the world, was created and designed by a man whose name is Dr. Chester Lewis Caress. His powerful seminars were initially designed to help business people master the strategies, tactics, and psychological insights of negotiating. And in his groundbreaking book, You Don't Get What You Deserve, You Get What You Negotiate, Dr. Caress teaches the reader strategies, techniques, tactics, tips, and skills to successfully negotiate issues, including asking for a raise, which is not always easy, buying a car, or resolving personal issues with a loved one. So think about it. How comfortable are you when it comes to maybe asking for a raise or buying a car, or even if there are personal issues in your life? Are you able? Are you willing? Are you skilled at the art? Because I think it really is an art of negotiation. Because what I have found as a psychotherapist, sex therapist, frequently people adopt and I give up position even before the discussion, the negotiation even begins. So, self-defeating tapes. I think that at times we all have to deal with some self-defeating tapes, lack of confidence, iffy self-esteem. But our self-defeating tapes that we play in our heads include things, and I think that for a lot of us, if we're really, really honest with ourselves, we will have to acknowledge that at least on occasion, we too hear these self-defeating tapes. I can't do this. He or she won't listen anyways. Arguing always makes things worse. These are the tapes. Maybe I'm wrong, or you are really doubting yourself and second guessing yourself, or I don't really deserve. These kinds of tapes, these kinds of messages that we play in our heads. What happens? Well, they all ensure every single one of these self-defeating, self-destructive, destructive tapes ensures that we won't get what we want and deserve. And you may wonder, well, why? Why is that going to be the case? Well, because we've already beaten ourselves in our heads before the match or before the negotiation has even begun. So what do? Breaking the self-defeating, my feelings don't matter cycle. And this is important. It's important for all of us. I don't think there is anyone, including myself, who hasn't had a lot of misgivings, a lot of self-doubts about a variety of different things throughout our life. But being able to make changes in our lives, we can do this. We need to understand why we behave as we do. Why are we hearing these self-defeating tapes? Because people who walk through life believing that things will never ever work out and that their needs and wants are unimportant, they typically learned these unfortunate, self-destructive, self-sabotaging lessons early on as children. The child who learns that his feelings don't matter learns early on, right? Not to express them. And this unconscious, and I think for a lot of people, it is really an unconscious dynamic. The unconscious dynamic of not asking for what we want can permeate some of not all of our relationships. So, I'm going to ask you a really important question. Do you ask for what you want? Now, we're not always going to get exactly what we want, but for sure, if we don't ask, we are not going to get. And saying yes, this is something else. We don't feel so good about ourselves, or our self-esteem is a little or a lot shaky. Saying yes when we really mean no. How often in your life somebody asks you something or somebody says something and you have this reaction? Yeah, it's okay. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't bother me. But when you ask yourself honestly, how do you really feel? You come to realize that you are not being honest with yourself, and you are also not being honest with anybody else. And this is one of the problems. It's a big problem of saying yes when we really mean no, because what happens is that it really plays havoc with us emotionally and even physically, and we are not living our life authentically. We are not being honest. And that's the thing, is it becomes impossible to have honest and authentic relationships with anyone, including ourselves. That's the point. So when I ask you every single week, how are you doing? And how is your mood? And how are your relationships? And are you taking care of your health? The question really, it's a very important question. Are you being honest with yourself? I think it's very, very easy. People will go about their days and they'll say, yes, everything is good. Everything is cool. I'm fine. It's wonderful. When underneath they may be feeling terrible, or they may be feeling the opposite. So for us to really be in tune with how we are really feeling is that's step number one. We have to have clarity before we're going to be able to communicate honestly and authentically with anyone. So these are the questions. I mean, these are really the first round of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And how often, and this would be something for all of you to think about, how often today is Monday, June the 10th, 2024. How often today did you happen to say yes to something when you really, really meant no? Or how often today were the self-defeating tapes playing in your head where you were telling yourself, I can't do this. I'm not going to succeed. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm not smart enough. Arguing always makes things worse. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really deserve. I wonder, and it would be fascinating if we could talk to each other right now. And you could tell me, actually, you could tell yourself how often, and hopefully the answer is not often at all. That would be ideal. But how often you are engaging in self-defeating and self-sabotaging behaviors. And of course, the real question then becomes, what do you need to do to turn off these destructive, self-destructive, self-sabotaging tapes. And if you're not able, if these are tapes that have been playing for a very, very long time, many of my patients have been hearing these tapes from the time they were children, this may be a really good opportunity. I mean, we can't change what's happened and what didn't happen, but this could be a really wonderful opportunity for you to reach out and get some help and toss away, bury the tapes, the self-destructive, self-defeating tapes that don't work for you, that never worked for you, and that never will work for you ever. So here it is in beautiful, sunny New York City. The temperature is, I think, close to 80. I was on the tennis courts this morning, had a really, really tough workout, but it was beautiful. And for me, exercise is key to my mental health. If I'm anxious or feeling down or uncertain, for me, getting on a treadmill or getting on the tennis courts really makes all the difference in the world. My dad knew that when I was a little girl growing up in Winnipeg. My husband Jim knows that, and of course I know that. So I always make sure that I am exercising on a regular basis, and it's something that we all really, really need to do, not just for our bodies to keep in shape, but for our mood and for our mental health as well. Well, the show, my friends, is coming to an end, and I want to leave you with my two really important weekly messages, which I hope you really will take in. The first is, again, to do everything that you can possibly do, which may mean pivoting in a variety of different ways to be living your life in ways that are truly, truly in your best interest, and to be eliminating, whether or not we're talking about people or foods, this is about eliminating toxicity, because a little bit of poison will ultimately kill us in some way. And secondly, with everything that's going on in the world, all the trauma, all the drama, we all need to do a much, much, much better job in learning to care about each other, accept each other's differences, and ideally love each other as human beings. So I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I will be back with you every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank Ryan, my wonderful producer, who really makes this so easy for me. I haven't been to the studio on a regular basis in a while. And again, it takes a village, whether we're talking about on the radio or whether or not we're talking about in life. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will talk again next week. Goodbye, everybody.